Welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and my co-host, Alex Wilson, is once again not with us today, unfortunately. He will be back tomorrow, but either way, we're still here. Fireside Giants is here to give you the daily news updates on the New York Giants and provide you with the elite content that you are craving for. So, the Giants had a really busy day yesterday. I did cover the news in a solo video yesterday. I went through the signing of Todd Davis. I talked about how they're bringing in Austin Reiter for a visit and the injury update that we got on Shane Lemieux. If you didn't see that, go check that out. It's on the channel. Shane Lemieux is going to be back in a couple of weeks. Austin Reiter, I like him a lot. So do a lot of Giants fans, but there's a couple question marks there as well, and Todd Davis, a pretty solid signing. But the Giants had a lot more news that happened later on that day after I recorded and uploaded that video. They signed another player, offensive lineman Joe Looney. They also signed a wide receiver, Damien Willis. They signed, or at least plan to sign, Alfred Morris. Old man Morris, the running back, is back. And of course, they had two key players coming back from COVID and injury PUP lists. So, Matt Peart and Blake Martinez. A lot of important stuff to get into, so let's discuss it, give you my thoughts and opinions, and I'd love to hear yours in the comment section below. So let's begin. First of all, let's start with Joe Looney, big signing that the Giants made yesterday. Joe Looney from the Dallas Cowboys is a 9-year NFL veteran that the Giants actually tried to sign last offseason. They couldn't reach a deal, and so ultimately Joe Looney re-signed with the Dallas Cowboys on a 1-year deal. He started 12 games for Dallas this past season playing center, but now he comes back to the offseason and links up with the Giants, and he's reunited with Jason Garrett, of course. That connection is obviously key here. Jason Garrett, having familiarity with Joe Looney, knows exactly what he's getting with him, has coached him for, many years, at least like 4 or 5 years when he was with Dallas. So that connection obviously played a key factor in this signing. And I do think that Joe Looney is a very good signing by the Giants because he provides quality depth. When Shane Lemieux went down with an injury, we all started to freak out. We're like, okay, we know that Shane Lemieux isn't that good, but him going down with an injury is still really scary because we don't have any depth behind him. He's going to start this year because we don't have a lot of talent on the offensive line. So we have to keep all that talent healthy and keep as much talent on the offensive line as possible since we don't have much of it. So when we almost lost Shane Lemieux, it was a real wake-up call, I think, for the Giants. You see them make this signing of Joe Looney. You see them bringing in Austin Reiter for a visit. I think it was a wake-up call for the Giants as they realized, man, we don't have a lot of bodies on the offensive line, definitely not a lot of talented ones, so we need to bring some more people in to help us contribute on the offensive line and hopefully improve this unit as we head into the season, and I think that's what Joe Looney is here for. One interesting thing about Joe Looney is that he's not just a pure center, he's actually played left guard and right guard before as well. He's kind of played all of the interior offensive line positions, similar to Zach Fulton. Zach Fulton has done that as well. When you look at Austin Reiter, who the Giants are bringing in for a visit, he's a pure center. He's really only ever played center in the NFL, and if the Giants sign him, they're not expected to move him to guard. They're expected to put him at center and then potentially move Nick Gates back to guard. So that's like an interesting scenario that I know a lot of Giants fans aren't too crazy about, and that's why there's some question marks with the Austin Reiter, because a lot of Giants fans are really confident in Nick Gates at center. I am too. I think he's going to be a great center. But could he potentially be a better guard, and could Austin Reiter potentially be a really good center as well? That's the question mark there. But Joe Looney at least provides us quality depth at every single one of those positions, the same way that Zach Fulton provides us quality depth at every single one of those positions. If there's an injury at center, okay, Joe Looney or Zach Fulton. If there's an injury at guard, okay, Joe Looney or Zach Fulton. And that's really great that the Giants now have all of that depth heading into the season. Of course, like I said, Joe Looney having familiarity with Jason Garrett's scheme, the way that he likes his protections called, and all of the blocking minutia that Jason Garrett requires from his offensive lineman. Joe Looney is very familiar with all of that. And, he wasn't like the best player in 2020, according to Pro Football Focus. His grade was a 50.7 overall, but he only allowed 3 sacks and 16 pressures, so he wasn't terrible. He was just your solid, average interior offensive lineman, and the Giants could absolutely use a solid, average interior offensive lineman. That could be really beneficial for them because, honestly, last season they didn't have solid, average interior offensive linemen. They had pretty poor offensive line play, especially on the interior. So Joe Looney, I don't know if he's necessarily an upgrade, but he's definitely an upgrade in terms of adding more depth to a roster that needs more depth on the interior of their offensive line. So very key signing there. And then, of course, the Giants also signed a wide receiver from the Cincinnati Bengals, Damien Willis, who joined the team in 2019. He didn't play much. But he did join the team in 2019. I believe he opted out or maybe just wasn't on the team in 2020. I didn't find that information, but I know that he didn't play last season. But in 2019, he had 9 receptions on 16 targets, but he did have 3 drops. So he's clearly got a little bit of an issue with drops, a little hands issue right there. And I tweeted about him yesterday, and I got a response from a Bengals fan. He said, "Bengals fan here. Damien Willis is not the guy. He struggles to separate and he can't hold on to the football. Those drop issues were pretty prevalent, and apparently he wasn't getting open too much." So there's your not-so-rave review from a Bengals fan on Twitter. Don't know how much stock he put into that. But if you do recall, in the 2019 preseason, Damien Willis was actually really good against the New York Giants. He caught a touchdown pass, had a huge reception down the left sideline. He's a 6'3", big body outside wide receiver, and he really flashed in preseason, though he wasn't able to put it together during the regular season. But maybe, the Giants remembered that from the 2019 preseason, or maybe that was last preseason, 2020. I don't recall, but he definitely flashed some things in that game against the Giants, so maybe the Giants remembered that and said, okay, he could be a quality signing here, at least to compete in training camp, because the Giants have a lot of really good depth at wide receiver, but they're still adding some talent there just to get some guys to compete. And here's my theory on Damien Willis. Of course, a lot of people are like, can he contribute on special teams? Well, he did play 9% of Cincinnati's special team snaps that year, which isn't a super high number, but clearly he has some sort of role that he can contribute in on special teams. So yes, that could be one of the things that the Giants are looking in with the signing. We know that every signing that the Giants make under the Joe Judge era, they've had an emphasis on special teams. How can he contribute in every phase of the game? But my theory on why Damien Willis was signed and how he could potentially have a role in the regular season is as a practice squad member on the scout team. So you have Damien Willis, who's a big 6'3", big body receiver, right? And you have all of these young cornerbacks who are developing, and they need to face different types of wide receivers because once the regular season begins, they're going to be facing guys like Tyreek Hill, who's short and super fast, but they're also going to face guys, like Amari Cooper, who's a bit taller and lankier and has a bit more speed, and they're going to face Mike Evans is a really good one to name. He's your big body possession contested catch receiver, right? Those cornerbacks are going to have to get used to playing such a physical, big outside wide receiver. And Damien Willis is a big, physical outside wide receiver. So this provides quality practice reps for the corners who are developing and preparing to face some big-bodied receivers in the regular season. And of course, if Damien Willis is with the team in the regular season, I predict that it's going to be on the practice squad playing this role on the scout team. So say the Giants are facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, which way they will be facing this year. So when you have your young DBs or whoever and they're practicing, of course, they get to go up against Kenny Golladay, who's one of those big-bodied elite catching traffic receivers, but let's say they need a couple more reps for some extra guys while Kenny Galladay's on the side. Maybe Kenny Golladay isn't fully healthy, right? Damien Willis can come in and imitate Mike Evans. He can be the Mike Evans on the scout team and play that big body outside contested catch role and allow the defenders to get some snaps going up against a player of that playing style. That's what he provides on the scout team. Now, that's really what the scout team's job is most of the time, is to imitate players that the team is about to face like as their opponents in the regular season. I remember Alex and we interviewed Brandon London. He's a former New York Giants player. He never really played much in the regular season, but he did contribute a lot on the practice squad, and he's now, you guys probably know Brandon London. He works in the New York Giants official media department, does a lot for their social media, so you've definitely seen his face before and have definitely heard from him, but he is a former player. I feel like a lot of people might not know that, and he did contribute on the scout team, and he told us a really great story when we interviewed him about there was a specific play. He was playing, I think that he was imitating Randy Moss for the Super Bowl, I believe. I don't fully remember the details of the story, but here's loosely how it goes. He was imitating a big body wide receiver. The team that they were going up against liked to run a specific play to that wide receiver. So he played that wide receiver, imitated him on that practice week and imitated him in those plays and in those reps, and he allowed one of the Giants cornerbacks to understand how that play works. And he said that after the game, the upcoming game that happened, The corner read that play because he remembered Brandon London playing that wide receiver role in practice. So he read the play, made the play, and broke up the pass or got an interception or something. And then he went up to Brandon London after the game and said, hey, that was because of you. You contributed to that. You made a difference on that play. So thank you for that. And that's really key. I feel like a lot of fans, casual football fans don't understand the scout team does play a significant role in practice. Those practice squad players, they play a role behind the scenes, and so Damien Willis could potentially play a pretty important role helping the team practice and helping the team develop going into the regular season. So I'm not going to say this is some great signing right here, but I'm just speculating on what his role with the Giants might exactly be, because I think most of us assume that Damien Willis is not going to be a starting caliber player, and he's not going to be a player who can feasibly earn a roster spot on the Giants, considering they have guys like John Ross, Dante Pettis, Austin Mack, and CJ Board all ahead of him, and they're probably not going to even carry all of those guys. One of those guys might even get cut. David Sills, even combined with Kenny Halladay, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard. Like, the Giants have a lot of wide receivers on this roster, so I'm just trying to speculate on what exactly Damien Willis' purpose here might be, and I think that might be it, just scout team. So now we'll move on to the other signing that the Giants made, which was Alfred Morris. Old man Morris is back, okay? Of course, we all know Alfred Morris, former Washington football team member. He played in 8 games with the New York Giants in 2020. He took 55 handoffs for 238 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. And fun fact, he did catch a receiving touchdown last season with the Giants, which was the first of his career. And he has played, let's see here, 9 seasons in the NFL, and that was his first receiving touchdown of his career. Really crazy and fun fact there, but why exactly did the Giants sign Alfred Morris once again? Let's speculate on that as well and give my take. Of course, this is more running back depth as Saquon recovers. We know he's still battling back against that ACL injury and slowly getting eased back into the game before the Giants feel that he's ready to compete at full speed this season, right? Saquon, I think he's got a huge year coming ahead, but we've got a lot of running backs signed on this roster. I think this has to be our 8th running back on the roster, 7th running back on the roster. There's a lot of backs on this roster right now, a lot of depth here, and I just think it's, getting those players in during training camp to practice. Maybe they can turn some heads and, earn a roster spot, but of course a lot of it is always just filling in for players who are injured like Saquon. Now, Alfred Morris, I think, is a pretty good signing, quality signing for a backup running back, for the reason being he's familiar with the team and he's familiar with the scheme. Obviously, if they're bringing him back, he was a good culture fit with what Joe Judge was trying to do last season, and they think that he can continue to be a good culture fit this upcoming season. Of course, he also played last year for the Giants, so he knows exactly what Jason Garrett is looking for this upcoming season in terms of the running game, in terms of how he likes his running backs to play. He's familiar with Jason Garrett, he's familiar with Joe Judge, and he's familiar with Daniel Jones and all the players that are going to be playing around him. So I think that familiarity is key. That's obviously why they signed Alfred Morris again, and I think that could be really useful as well with helping maybe some of the younger running backs on the roster. Think Gary Brightwell, who they drafted in the 6th round. Maybe he needs a little bit more help getting up to speed with the scheme. Well, now you have a veteran like Alfred Morris, who's been around for a very long time, has learned a lot of tricks in the NFL and knows some of the ways to success. I mean, he rushed for over 1,000 yards in each of his first 3 seasons in the league. So, Alfred Morris, being a seasoned veteran, can definitely help some of those young players and also just be a stable, constant player that's going to give you what you're going to get from him in the regular season, in training camp, and he's familiar with the team, so he knows what he's getting from the team. So I like that signing. I think that's a good one to make during training camp. And, worst case scenario, if he doesn't make the roster, I'm sure that he's a guy that they can sign mid-season as well to contribute. I think that him being familiar with the team and scheme is super, super important here. But now let's get into the 2 players who are returning to football action. I'm super excited for the first one. Matt Peart is back from the PUP, the PUP list. Of course, he was on that because he's been dealing with a back injury. That's always scary. Apparently, he's been dealing with it since April. That was the report that we got. And so we were really scared and concerned. We were like, is Matt Peart going to be ready for the regular season? What's going on here? We haven't seen him practice at all. He's been dealing with this injury since April. Backs sometimes give you a lot of grief, and they really don't heal so well. So back injuries can be really tricky, but Matt Peart is back. He's practicing with the team. He returned to practice last night. The Giants were away for practice. They were in Newark, New Jersey. They were practicing in front of fans. It was a private practice, but it was public to fans who were privately invited to the practice. A bunch of young football players, which I think is really cool. I'm happy that the Giants were able to set something up like that. Hopefully they do more stuff like that next season. Hopefully training camp is just open to the public next season. I would love that. I find that really, really exciting. And I would definitely have to make a trip up there to go to training camp. But anyway, like I was saying with Matt Peart, he was practicing last night. I don't think he was doing too much. Of course, I'm sure that they're still ramping him up, as Joe Judge likes to say, easing him back into the lineup. But he did contribute some snaps in practice yesterday. He is recovered, or at least recovering nicely, and he should be ready for the start of the regular season. And I'm going to stand by my hot take. I think that if Matt Peart is fully healthy this year, he will be the best starting offensive lineman on the Giants. That's my hot take. I think that Matt Peart is that good. I loved him coming out of college, coming out of UConn. I was obsessed with him. He was like the number one guy that I wanted the Giants to draft in the middle rounds. They did. I was super thrilled about that. And, of course, I'm thrilled to have him on the team and excited to see how he develops this year as the presumed starter. He should be the starter, and this should be his breakout season. He was supposed to start at the end of last year. Apparently, he was dealing with his back injury, so he didn't. But now he's healthy, and I think he's going to have a big year this year starting at right tackle for the Giants. And that's really exciting because if he does pan out, he'll be the bookend on the right side, and Andrew Thomas will be the bookend on the left side. And the Giants will have two young tackles who were drafted in the same year going forward. That would be really, really great. So I'm really high on Matt Peart, and I'm excited that he's now back from his injury and ready to compete for the Giants this year. But, of course, another player that many Giants fans are really high on is Blake Martinez. Apparently, Madden isn't so high on him. They gave him a 79 overall rating for the upcoming Madden 22 game. That's just ridiculous. I'm not saying that Blake Martinez is the best linebacker in the NFL, but he's better than a 79 overall. He's definitely one of the best linebackers in the NFL. So very confused by that rating. EA Sports confuses the crap out of me all the time. I never agree with their roster ratings, but I'll give you guys a little secret. If you didn't know this, there's like two guys who do the ratings for Madden. They're like really big. The two main guys that make the ratings. One of them is a diehard Cowboys fan, and he hates the Giants and he hates Giants fans. And honestly, I personally feel that's why the Giants always get shafted in their ratings, and it's really frustrating. But it is what it is. Now, anyway, Blake Martinez has been returned from the COVID/reserve list. Of course, he was on that list for, not even a week, I don't think. So he must be vaccinated. But Blake Martinez did test positive for COVID, I believe. So he was on the list, but now he's back and he's practicing with the team once again, which is obviously crucial for the Giants. He is one of the best defenders on this team. He's kind of the quarterback of our defense, and he did play a tremendous role and had a tremendous season this past year. Of course, the Giants did sign Todd Davis yesterday, who I discussed and went over in yesterday's video. And I believe that this was because once Blake Martinez went on that COVID list, they realized that they needed more depth at the position at inside linebacker. And of course, Reggie Ragland is also on the NFI list, non-football injury list. So the Giants were without their two probably starting linebackers. Of course, they did have Tay Crowder, but their two run-defending linebackers, Blake Martinez and Reggie Ragland, were both absent from practice. So, and, of course, the Giants' protocol with these guys who can come off of the COVID list has been to slowly work them back into practice and back into training camp. So don't expect Blake Martinez to just jump back in and be back. I think that's why Todd Davis was signed, because they do need someone to fill in for Blake Martinez while he slowly ramps back into football speed. So I think that Todd Davis signing was directly related to Blake Martinez being on the COVID list. But of course, very excited that Blake Martinez is off the COVID list and he is now back and ready to help the Giants contribute to some wins this upcoming season. So that's really your news roundup for today. The Giants are on an off day. I don't believe they're practicing today. It's Sunday. I know that they're not practicing today, so they're probably practicing tomorrow. And, of course, Alex will be back tomorrow in case you miss him that dearly. And we will absolutely be covering up all the news that the Giants have given us tomorrow in our next Fireside Giants episode. So make sure you stay tuned to that. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you're new, subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss a video. And I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.